Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast. As always, Brant and Bo coming at you. We're going to break down some rookies, just a soft breakdown on a couple rookie wide receivers this week. This will be our last week for a few weeks, breaking down some rookies in the upcoming draft. We're going to get into some other things, like I think next week we're gonna talk about some sophomore breakouts and players that we're looking forward to increasing their draft value and people to go after in Dynasty, the sophomore junior breakout area. But today we're going to break down a couple wide receivers coming into this draft. Some guys that we're just going to give you a quick little breakdown of what we've seen on film and everything else. Bo, you got anything else to add before we jump into these guys?
Yeah, it sounds like, Brant, this may be our last episode, period, where we're not doing a live video feed on YouTube to follow along with us. So if anybody out there is interested in watching the two Fatboyz cognitive wheels, and next week could be your chance on the Fantasyholics podcast YouTube channel. So definitely some exciting times for us to be jumping over to the YouTube channel, putting these ugly mugs back in the public eye after spending some of the Sunday mornings with everybody during the season. So definitely something we're looking forward to there. So what better way to start that off than, like you said, Brant, next week hitting it off with some second year guys that we expect to take another step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Next week and talking about guys to really look forward to in redraft leagues and dynasty leagues and startup leagues. I know that we'll be jumping on as we get onto these lives. We'll be jumping into doing some live mock drafts and a few other, other things throughout the offseason. I know we want to get into the dynasty. We want to get into a little bit of redraft leagues, and who knows, maybe we'll have a couple extra people join us, and we'll talk some IDP stuff. I know you and me are a little softer on that one. That Seth is the go-to guy on that one, so maybe we can get him to join in with us, join in with the Fatboyz.
I'm not sure calling Seth the go-to guy is not undercutting his talents a little bit. I think he is a guru. Definitely listening to his pods this year, I definitely learned a lot. I'm not sure I'm still ready to dabble my toes into IDP because I just don't think I'm smart enough, nor do I think I have the patience for that. I'm a simple guy, Brant. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into this wide receiver. These wide receivers we got here. I got what is deemed to be the best wide receiver, possibly the best wide receiver in this class, and that's Quentin Johnson out of TCU. The man is 6'4", 215 pounds, an athletic freak. One thing about this guy is he did not break out in 2022 like a lot of people had him pinged to break out. He didn't have that killer outstanding season that was going to shoot him way up the draft boards. None of these wideouts this year really are jumping off the draft boards or jumping up the draft boards in the top 10. This guy here is probably, in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, Bo, but in most people's eyes, this is the number one wideout coming out this year, and most people have him pinged in roughly the 15 to 20 area, and I believe he's the first wide receiver off most people's mock draft boards already.
Yeah, Quentin Johnson definitely is a guy that I know a lot of people were really excited about. For those of us that didn't get a lot of TCU games this year to watch, that a lot of people were really excited about getting to see kind of how he looked in the college football playoff and then the championship game. And I know against Michigan he had some pretty outstanding plays, and there in the national title game against Georgia. TCU didn't have much to write home about, period. So I'm not sure we got a whole lot out of him there. I know Quentin Johnson, one of the biggest knocks on him is that he doesn't really use his size to his advantage. But that's something when you get to the NFL that, any good wide receiver coach is going to spend a little bit of time working with him on taking advantage of that, using his hands and his size to go up and get the ball in the top shelf where the kids can't reach, so to speak. So that's definitely something I expect to see him improve. And I think, Brant, it's imperative to say that I think there's probably 3, maybe 4 guys that you could say could be the wide receiver one in this class. And it's going to be a lot of landing spot dependency. Obviously, teams like Kansas City, they're lacking a true number one, but the offense is high powered. If any one of these guys happens to fall there, that's going to be a huge boost for that guy's draft stock, and it'll definitely change some things. Again, right, like we kind of talked about last week, the running backs. I think Bijan Robinson's obviously the 101 in a lot of people's drafts. Then you're probably going to see Jahmyr Gibbs, and then it becomes one of these wide receivers who happens to fall in the right spot. As long as you're not in a super flex league, obviously that changes some things. But I do think that Quentin Johnson has the best upside, in my opinion, to be the best long-term just wide receiver top 10 potential on a fantasy season moving forward, just because of that size. But he's got to develop his game to match that. Now, the two wide receivers I have, Brant, both of these guys are kind of smaller in stature. Yeah. And the first one I'm going to talk about, are you done with Quentin Johnson?
I've got a few more notes on him here. I just wanted to hear your side of it. I got a few more notes, and you actually wrapped it right into it. I started with his weaknesses because that was the one thing that stood out to me, is he doesn't use his size that greatest in contested catches. He's obviously he's not the greatest, even though his size. And then another thing, despite his size, he's not a very dominant blocker, so you could see him losing some snap shares because he doesn't block very well. And he had a very limited route tree there in college at TCU. They didn't run too many routes, so his route tree is very limited. And he doesn't sit down in coverage or in zone coverage very well. And this is one of the biggest knocks on actually both my guys that I kept seeing as I looked at and as I read about them. Both of them, and we'll talk about my second guy later, they both have focus drops. Quentin Johnson had 8 drops in 2022, all due to lack of focus on the ball. So, I mean, he does have some stuff that he's going to have to sharpen up there in the pros. But some of his strengths is he's got great body, great size to be a true wide receiver one in most offenses. He's got great start and stop speed in order to create that separation down the field a little bit. He's also got that great run at or yak yard ability. He's kind of like a George Kittle type of guy, where he's a dominant runner. Once he gets that ball, he's normally trucking that first guy and getting those yak yards.
Yeah, again, Brandon, I think it goes without saying he's probably the most naturally gifted wide receiver in this class as far as what he's got going forward. And again, I think he falls into the right spot, learns how to use those big hands of his to catch the ball, and instead of trying to bring it into his body and things. I think you could see that this guy really be the pinnacle wide receiver of this class. Another one that I think a lot of people have pretty high expectations for, especially coming into this season in the college landscape, was Jackson Smith-Njigba. He had a couple touchdown catches last year in the championship game. Definitely looked, or the playoff game last year, definitely looked the part of a potential first-round wide receiver and a big-time fantasy aspect. But the problem with Jackson Smith-Njigba is that he's only 6'1" and only 200 pounds. Not huge for an NFL wide receiver. Obviously not, as small as Devonta Smith, who's definitely proving you don't have to be a big wide receiver in the NFL to get things done, which I know you like hearing that come out of my mouth, Brant. But Jackson Smith-Njigba, some of the things that I saw about him watching the film is that he's just an over-the-top amazing slot wide receiver. This is a guy that if I could dream up a landing spot for Jackson Smith-Njigba, just get the man in Kansas City, because him and Patrick Mahomes would be so fun to watch. He has an extremely quick release off the line of scrimmage. He's got very loose hips making cuts on his routes, so he makes a lot of guys miss because he's got so much flexibility that it seems like he's going to go one way, and then without much movement, he's gone the other direction, oftentimes leaving DBs looking very silly. He's got a knack for finding soft spots in defenses for when the plays break down. Just naturally finds a spot to get open and get his quarterback's eye. When he's waiting for the ball to come to him on an in route, or again on a broken play where he's got his eyes towards the quarterback, he has the natural ability of sinking his hips to wait for the ball, which again allows him to make a sudden movement as soon as he gets the ball in. And honestly, from the slot, it's hard to see this a lot of times with a college wide receiver, but his route tree is pretty top notch. This guy can run a lot of slot routes. It wouldn't surprise me to see him get some outside looks as well in the NFL, obviously. And I think with as good as his route tree is, he's not going to have a problem there. It's almost a quicker version of Calvin Ridley, is what I see here. Now, again, the things that kind of worry me here is that his best collegiate season was in 2021, where there was 3 wide receivers. And again, I don't need to remind everybody who those 3 were, but they all went over 1,000 yards. And 2 of those guys are now in the NFL. This year, we didn't get to see what he did as the true alpha in his offense because he was injured. So there is those question marks about his durability, what he could be as an alpha. Like if the Houston Texans draft Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud with their first pick in the first round, and they say we want to give this guy a weapon right off the bat, and they take Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't know what he's going to do if he goes there and has to be the number one in an offense that's starting from scratch. So that's my biggest knock with him. Again, the only other thing would be his versatility, just because he is primarily going to be a slot wide receiver at the next level. I worry about how much is he going to be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, which again, if you're running 30% of your passing plays out of 2 wide receiver splits, and you have a couple tight ends on the field, that definitely eliminates a lot of his ability and value moving forward. I think he's got a good enough route tree that won't be an issue, and his size isn't horrendous. Not as bad as the next guy I'm going to talk about anyway. So really, it was hard for me to find any true knocks against Jackson Smith and Jigba. And again, if I was ranking the players right now, I do have Jackson Smith and Jigba slightly above Quentin Johnson. But again, landing spot's going to be the key with all these guys.
Yeah, with Jackson Smith, he kind of got overshadowed this year with the breakout year of Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. But yeah, he's a potential top 5 pick in most rookie drafts. Like you said, pending landing spot. Get him with a good quarterback, like you said, Patrick Mahomes or something like that. This guy, the sky's the limit. And it's funny, I didn't realize that your guys were so small as I roll into my next guy here in Jordan Addison out of USC. 6 foot, anywhere from 175 to 200 pounds. I haven't quite figured out exactly how big he is. I guess we'll find out at the combine maybe if he actually weighs in. But he's another smaller guy. He's going to be, like you said, primarily lined up in the slot, so the landing spot is going to be a big thing for him as well. But some of his greatest strength is he's got elite change of direction speed. The man, he has very little wasted motions when it comes down to running his routes and everything else. He may be, honestly, one of the best, if not the best route runner in this class after watching some of his film and reading up on it a little bit. He's great at tracking the ball downfield. But here's where it comes. One more strength, and I wrote this one in because it kind of goes with one of Johnson's weaknesses. Addison's outstanding at finding the hole in most zone coverages. So one of his biggest knocks that I saw was he body catches on deep throws. He doesn't use his hands very well on deep passes. He lets the ball hit him in the pads a lot. So that's going to be something that will have to really be worked on. He's never really seen a whole lot of press coverage there at USC. A lot of it was zone backed off coverage. He's never seen man-to-man coverage, so we don't know how much we're actually going to, or how well he's going to respond to that. And then once again, too many concentration drops on his part. So that's going to be one of the biggest knocks there for his draft stock. I'm excited to see him at the combine and future pro days to see how his draft stock rises.
Yeah, Addison was definitely a guy coming into this season that I think a lot of people would have said he was the wide receiver 1 in this class. Him and Jackson Smith and Jigba were probably 2 of the bigger names on, at least on my radar, going into this college season. And I was definitely excited to see what Addison did, leaving the University of Pittsburgh, going to Southern California to team up with Caleb Williams, who I think we'll be spending a lot of time talking about next year, Brant. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, Jordan Addison, again, this is another guy that you put him in the right spot. This guy, his draft capital skyrockets. In redrafts, I think if all of these guys fall to the right spot, I could see all 3 of these names as rookies going in the top 5 rounds of redrafts as well. So, and again, Brant, I think we've kind of seen the landscape change a little bit in fantasy football over the last couple of years. It almost feels like it's a wide receiver dominated industry almost at this point, because There's a pretty big drop off in running backs. So if you don't have a great one right off the top, you're gonna be getting what you get. Whereas wide receiver, it's almost like wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 30 are both putting up 20 points a game. So wide receivers are definitely something to have a lot of, and have a lot of good quality ones. It definitely helps out. So you brought up how small Jordan Addison was. Well, let me tell you about Zay Flowers. This is a guy that I think is going to be either late day 1 pick or early day 2 pick. He is 5'10" and 172 pounds.
He's going to be a New England Patriot.
There's a chance, and let me tell you, I'd be excited about it. Because Zay Jones, his size is lacking, and initially it's like you hear these numbers, Brant, and you're just instantly like, oh man, how does that translate? But this guy was kind of the jack of all trades in college, and what I mean by that is, over the course of his career at Boston College, he had 200 receptions, so he was used and abused in the passing game. 3,056 total yards for 29 touchdowns. Those are boss numbers. The only reason it didn't sound, or you didn't hear that much about him, is because he was at Boston College. Had this dude put up numbers like this at Alabama, he'd have been in a Heisman Trophy running the last 3 years in college. Now, here's where it's interesting to me is you don't typically see a lot of college wide receivers with numbers like this. This dude in his career has rushed the ball 57 times for 345 yards and another 2 touchdowns. So definitely showing that at his size, it's not such a huge disadvantage for him. So that's definitely something that I found that I liked. So for his pros, I have that he's got great contact balance for a wide receiver, which is probably why he was running the ball so much, because the dude's just hard to take down. If you don't wrap up on this guy, he's going to bounce off of you and just keep going. He's got a great initial burst of speed off the line of scrimmage as a wide receiver. And when a DB hand checks him, it doesn't knock him off balance. It doesn't slow him down. He just explodes off the line of scrimmage. One of my favorite things about him, too, was that watching him get involved in the screen game it's electric. He catches the ball 2-3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Before you know it, he's 7 yards upfield, getting ready to just either lower the shoulder and the head down and just truck stick a DB, or making guys miss and look silly. He has a good route tree. I will say it needs to be developed a slight bit more in the NFL. And then he's got exceptional hands for 5'10" and 172 pounds. He goes up and makes contested grabs. He also is very similar to Jackson Smith and Jigba as far as the loose hips. So in other words, if he catches the ball, he can cut real easy, make cuts, make guys miss. He's got that breakaway speed too when he gets the ball in open space. I think he could be a deep ball threat. Again, the cons on this guy though are again the size. Is going to be an issue because he's going to have to almost be exclusively a slot wide receiver. So again, very similar to Jackson Smith and Jigba, this is going to be a guy that he may limit himself on the availability of being on the field. But we've seen plenty of guys like Cooper Kupp and guys like that get it done out of the slot for many years. So not a huge deterrent. But again, I think really for myself, I kind of looked into this wide receiver class a lot deeper as a whole, because in some of my dynasty leagues, I'm going to have a need at wide receiver. And these 4 names that we hit on this week, I think, are really the cream of the crop, and then there's going to be a tier drop off. Again, Zay Flowers for me, I think it'd be hard for him to become the wide receiver 1 in this class, Brant. I think he's probably pretty safely ranked at 4 for me right now. But if these guys go where they're going to be number 2s on their offense, and Zay Flowers happens to be the one that goes to Kansas City or New England where he's going to be the focal point of the offense, I could see myself falling in love with a guy like Zay Flowers.
Yeah, absolutely. A little extra guy like that could turn into your next Cooper Kupp type guy, where he's just finding the holes and making people miss and using his speed to his advantage. Is definitely a guy that you could get excited for real easy, especially if he falls into a good landing spot, like you said, New England or Kansas City would be a great spot for him.
Yeah, I think all of these wide receivers, Brant, I imagine as it gets closer to the NFL draft, you and I will do stuff where we look at projected landing spots for these guys, whether we'd love the fit there or not. Obviously, there's some mock drafts coming out right now from like Daniel Jeremiah and other big name guys like that in the football world, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of landing spots for the wide receivers, because most of the time it's just first round drafts. but I have seen Jackson Smith and Quentin Johnson linked a couple of times to the Houston Texans. I don't necessarily love it, just because you don't know what you're going to get in that offense. But then again, these guys will be the focal point, so there is reason to like that as well. So I'm sure as it gets closer, you and I'll talk about that quite in depth, look at potential landing spots and good fits for some of these guys. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking at some of these mock drafts here. Last year, I didn't look at them as closely, with Seattle not having a first round pick for most of the offseason until Russell left. But this year, I've been looking at them a little closer and paying a little more attention to what's out there now. So this offseason is definitely going to be a fun one to watch. We got a lot of quarterback carousel going on in the NFL. Prior to the draft, you'll see some, and then you got some big name running backs that are going out, and then you got these rookie wide receivers. And I mean, last year we saw how many wide receivers change landing spots or get the bag and everything. So this offseason, I think, is going to be focused on the quarterbacks and running backs this year, and so it's going to be fun. And just think if one of those quarterbacks that are out there as a free agent winds up in Houston and gets one of these young wide receivers, how big of a boost that could be. So it's going to be a fun off season. We're definitely going to be here. Like you said at the beginning, we're going to change up the Fatboyz just a little bit, going live on some YouTube streams and getting our video podcast out there. So bear with us while we make this transition. Stick with us, and we're gonna be getting out some good information this off season to you.
Absolutely. We're going to do our best to get out good information. Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm still tooting our horn on being right about not a top 30 wide receiver or pass catcher from Green Bay. Christian Watson made me nervous there several times at the end of the season, but he didn't quite get it done. So toot that horn for the Fatboyz. But we got called crazy on that one, as well as the Jets to the moon, baby.
Yeah, well, the Jets did go to the moon. They had a top 10 running back for a while. Then they had a lot of wide receivers, and then even their backup running backs came in and played very well. So, yeah, Jets to the moon. We'll find our moon team later this offseason.
Absolutely.
But as always, stay hungry.
And stay fat, my friends.